Welcome to Kevin Richards VIPs. Today's guest is a local musician, promoter, battling his own life struggles. Today we get to know a friend of mine, Ian Churchward. So we're standing at Big John Records in downtown Barrie. I'm talking to a very old friend, not calling you very old, but a very old friend.
That's all right.
Ian, so great to see you. Thank you for joining me on the show.
Thank you, Kevin.
Ian, you're an old Barrie boy. And so let's kind of go through this a little bit because you're so interesting and fascinating. And there aren't a lot of people who can say that they're born and raised and have been here most of their life, like you.
True.
So why are we standing at Big John's? Why did you want to shoot in here? What was it where you're a record junkie?
Well, ironically, it's funny because I actually worked in this building in the mid 80s, going back about 30 some odd years when it was actually a paint store. And I worked in here, but any record store to me is pretty well home sweet home. There's nothing better than flipping through vinyl and seeing what I don't have, seeing what I need, and it also brings back some amazing memories as well.
Yeah.
Nothing better than the great memories that, especially music, takes you back to a certain era and a certain time.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, so I wasn't exactly born here. I came here when I was 6 years old.
No.
So it makes it almost coming up to 50 years now, actually,
Yep.
which is quite a long time. I've tried to leave a couple of times and do the Toronto thing, but I think our water system was tapped with something that just kept on luring me back in. Yeah.
Yeah, and we've watched even Big John's grow from when it used to be beside the Roxy when
That's
it was
true.
like a couple hundred records in a little tiny place.
Yeah. It was basically a closet at that time,
Yeah.
and then now look at this. He's built up quite an empire here for the boys.
Yeah, I
so.
saw you going through the Madonna stuff and the.
Well, I've got my closet artist that I admit. It wasn't the Right Said Fred section anyway.
Right, so Fred. Wow. So when we kind of come back to the whole Ian thing, growing up here and being a part of Barrie, you went to Steel Street.
Yes,
I think that's where we met for the first time.
That's right, yes.
A long time ago.
Yeah, we won't say how long, but yeah.
Yeah, I think we're in the same grade, but you're a few years older than me. I'm just kidding.
I was the only one driving to school.
Nice. Grade 8. So let's go back a little bit. What was it like for you growing up in Barrie? What did you like about growing up here in Barrie? Like, because I talk to you and it's always about the old days, right? Mm-hmm. So what was it about the old days that you really loved about Barrie?
Well, it was, at that time it had a very, obviously it was a small town mentality to it. And I think that the population at that time when we came here in 68 or so was roughly around 23,000 or so. And as a child, you don't really know exactly your total surroundings because everything is kind of fresh and new. But as I grew up and getting involved in the music, I saw what was offered in this town, and there's been some amazing artists that have come out of this town.
We remember Rev.
Yes, Rev, yes.
So
Chris
proud of
Ron
those guys. Those guys were so
yeah,
great.
Exactly,
Yeah.
they were great. And people like Carly Aikens.
And
who
EastEnders.
Yes, the East Enders. So there's been some amazing talent that's come through the city, and it does have a lot to offer. Things have changed, I think, quite a bit in the music scene. When I started getting into it back in high school, from there on, and when I started working in the bar system, back in that time, we had the Clifton, there was the American, the Wellington, the Simcoe. I could probably name a few other ones where there was just live music going on all the time.
Barrie used to really embrace its live music culture. It
was amazing what happened in this town, and it's strange how as the years go on, the crowds have unfortunately not coming up per ratio as they were back in the time, which is rather unfortunate, but sign of the times, I guess. I don't know what the overall problems are, but I think Barrie has a lot to offer, and as once again as time goes on, our culture department is very active in promoting it and being multicultural with the scene, in which I've also had
We've
the
watched
opportunity.
that sort of transition.
Yeah. And so I got involved with that with the City of Barrie Culture Department too. I host the Rhythm Fest, and
which I love.
Oh, good. Yeah. It's a great event, and more people should check it out because the international rhythms are just incredible. I got involved with it because I was approached to put some sort of a street input into the Rhythm Fest. So I came up with
more of a stomp kind of aspect of it, or more
no more rock and roll.
Yeah.
So we came up with I came up with an idea to have a rock and roll drumming competition. Cool. So it kind of brought a little bit of a different culture to it. Brought a little bit of a different aspect and element to it. Instead of just being international beats, we added a bit of a rock and roll section to it, and it's always been a packed tent. It's one of the favorite events of the Rhythm Fest. So.
Cool. Well, you've always been musically inspired. Like even as a youngster, you liked your vinyl, right? You liked your records.
Yes.
Who were some of your first influences that got you even inspired in music? Like what, if you had a place young, what was your first record?
First record, I was fortunate enough to have an amazing brother who not only gave me his hand-me-downs with his stereo systems, but, well, actually he didn't really know, but I used to look into his vinyl collection and grab the odd thing and steal. So growing up, I was raised listening to the Beatles and Moody Blues, and then that changed with Alice Cooper, and it got a little bit more, I'd say a little bit more...
Eclectic?
Eclectic, exactly, and a little bit more diverse. So I was sitting in high school one day. Actually, prior to that, I was used to watch the New Music. Great show that was on City TV. Deanie Petty and John Roberts, J.D. Roberts.
Classics. The old,
So one day I was watching it, and the Sex Pistols happened to come on, and for something just triggered in my mind that's me. Now here's my excuse to dress weird and be me and to express the way I am through fashion and music. So I really
and that's what it was, right? Because there was always a big influence on the fashion and the music, like the old CFNY days with the old Chris Shepherd, right? We used to sit around on a Saturday night at a party and we would crank that. Nowadays people don't do that. They might throw it on a dance station or whatever and get lots of commercials. But back then you'd get 2 hours of some of the best stuff from Bauhaus, Susie and the Banshees, all kinds of crazy stuff that they were leaders.
Yeah,
right?
Very much so. It was quite an explosion within a few short years. But so I started dressing and acting the role, I guess, a little bit more. And then musically, I was sitting in the library one day. I think it was in grade 10 or 11, and back then it was you wore an earring, and it was like, ooh, look, he's wearing it on the right side. He must be gay, you know. And so it was almost like growing up in a small town, like I'm talking like a rural town for me, because I was perceived completely different. I fortunately didn't have any problems with it. Some of my fellow friends had a lot more problems than I did. I was sitting in the library one day in high school, and a friend of mine had come up to me, and I knew he had a band, and he asked if I wanted to perform with them in the variety show.
And what did you play?
I did vocals. I was singing. So I asked him, "What songs are you doing?" And he said, "What do you want to do?" And I said, "Well, let's do God Save the Queen." And of course, my Canadian iconic punk band Teenage Head was another one. So we did Let's Shake. So
nice.
Word got out that throughout the school that we were going to be playing God Save the Queen, and somehow, I don't know how it got out, but I was approached by a vice principal.
But then a Teenage Head played Eastview.
They did actually at one time. That's true. So we were told not to do it, and of course, by telling me not to do it, which basically
your Jim
says,
Morrison moment.
Exactly.
Your total Jim Morrison Doors moment.
Yeah, it's too late. Yeah. So we did it, and there's a little bit of backlash from that, but. So that was actually my first performance on stage, and from there I think I just got the itch. So
you performed around and you opened for a few bands too, a few people that were pretty decent.
I've been fortunate enough. I think when I started getting back into the music scene again, but as far as the live performance goes, I think my biggest goal was basically I just want to play on a stage in Toronto. That's all I wanted to do. To me, that was a goal. And we were fortunate enough to play at the Hard Rock Cafe a couple of times, and we opened up for the Misfits here when they played here in Barrie.
Classic old punk.
And yes.
A lot of kids wearing Misfit shirts that I don't think know any of their music.
They have no idea.
No. Like you're one of the rare guys that would be cool enough to wear a Ramones shirt.
Yes.
Right? Not a lot of guys would even think about wearing a Ramones shirt.
Exactly. Yeah. And a real one, not a knockoff.
A real one, yeah.
So so that was a big dream come true for me to be able to play with idols and icons, and so we've had a couple of opportunities to play with some bigger cats like that, and I look back at it and just think I feel fortunate to. It's not that we made a big league and did tons of records and toured a lot, but we kind of stuck to the Southern Ontario circuit and just due to family commitments and work, etc. But thoroughly enjoyed every minute. I'm still kind of back into it again, I guess, to some degree. I haven't really left, but
Well, it doesn't really leave you, does it? Like, you look at the old guys that did some of the cover bands, like Hell's Bells around town. You got old Crazy Steve, who was one of the best musicians, and just his stage presence was just so crazy. He was so good at doing that. And I've seen you, around town and do stuff, and people who know you know that you put on a show, and you're talented, right? And I think that that's unfortunate that it's hard to break out of Barrie. It's hard to break even out of Toronto.
True.
Like, it eats you up.
Yeah, true. We when we started the band, that was our goal, was to put on a show. Whether there was 2 people there or whether there was 200 or 2,000.
Perform.
It didn't matter, because people paid to come see you. And I get bored very easy when I go see bands, especially these days, when they're standing there and they look like they just got off work at Canadian Tire, wearing the same shirt they've worn for the last 2 days. There's a missing element of performance these days, and with the type of music that we were doing, it needed that. Maybe because it was also to hide a bit of my insecurities and other things. So jumping around a lot was just something that I had to do.
Yeah.
Sometimes it didn't always work out too well. I had a couple of moments, not with my own band, but with some friends. You probably know Fishhead, some friend Rich, and all these guys go back to high school. Tony Battaglia, actually, was in the first band that I played with at Eastview.
Really?
So Fish had asked me to come up and perform with them once, and unfortunately I had a bit of an incident. I wiped out and I took Tony out.
On stage?
Yes, on stage. It was a tad embarrassing, but then I was lying on my back and I'm thinking, why is there no music? All I hear is laughter. Why did they stop? My band would have just kept on going. So,
hey, I was at Lollapalooza and I watched Chris Cornell do a stage dive and he landed on the fence.
Yeah.
And he tore himself up.
Yeah, and the show kept on going.
Yeah, you got to keep going. So let's kind of, maybe it's a funny sort of segue into this, but so you've got that wonderful past and you've got this incredible thing that you're still holding on to the music, and I love that, and it keeps you Ian, right? But something happened to you not long ago, right? There's a reason you're on a cane right now. You're battling some problems. What happened?
About 2.5, 3 years ago, I started to develop what they call bunion or hammer toe. It was like an extra baby's foot growing out of the top side of my right foot.
Okay.
It wasn't quite that bad. I'm exaggerating a bit. But anyway, it got
I know what a bunion is, and people talk about them, but this is a serious one.
I always stereotype it as being, the little old ladies that get these
bunions.
things, but it could have been from soccer. I have no idea. But anyway, so I developed the lump on my foot, and decided, because my shoes were no longer fitting properly, I was in pain. It was very discomforting. I thought,
well, they rub and they get sore.
Yeah. It's not a fun thing. I think it's very underestimated what people understand as far as the pain involved with it. So I had the surgery done, and I tried to go back to work approximately 5 months later, 6 months. I worked for about 2 weeks, and I just couldn't do it. I just couldn't walk. When I was coming home, I was soaking my foot. I was wrapping it. I was in just so much pain. And my foot had eventually started changing color. It developed some purpley blotches. It was constantly a beet red tone.
That's not good, yeah.
Hot, very hot. So even the sensation of a silk sheet would send me over the edge.
Ouch.
Anything touching it. Therefore, I had to upgrade a couple of shoe sizes. Socks became irritable. Everything was irritable. And so I went back to my doctor, and he had suggested that I go get some more x-rays done and go see a different doctor. So I went to a foot clinic here in Barrie, and they had a doctor come up from Toronto. And this is going back, so by the time this had gone from the surgery to this point, it was almost over a year. So not understanding why I'm going through this. As I said, I was set up with this doctor in Toronto, and he diagnosed me, took my sock off, he felt my foot, asked me a bunch of questions, and he said, you have CRPS.
Which is?
At first I thought it was, I wasn't too sure what it was actually at first, but it's chronic regional pain syndrome.
Okay.
So I fit into all of the symptoms of this. Some of the symptoms that are involved with it are not just a physical aspect, it's a mental thing. Depression was huge. I couldn't figure out why am I so down? Why am I so irritable? Why am I so angry at the world? And it was because of my foot.
That's a tough thing to deal with.
It was because of my foot. So When you can no longer walk properly, and I couldn't drive anymore. I tried to drive once. I drove my daughter up to Aurelia, and she said, "Dad, you can go a little bit faster if you want. I'm on the highway." And she goes, "Speed up." And I said, I'm trying, but I can't feel the pedal. So I'm pushing down, but I don't feel
the pedal underneath your foot.
I don't feel
so
the
you don't even
pedal.
know where you are acceleration-wise.
Yeah, I was doing 30 on the highway, so it was decided I better pull over before I get a ticket for going too slow, which doesn't happen too often.
So then what are they doing for the pain for your foot?
Well, there's not really a lot of options. After discussing with a pain specialist at our local hospital, one of the only healing agents that they have now is done through an epidural. So I decided at that point, there's no way I'm doing an epidural. When I signed that little piece of paper when I had my bunion surgery that said there's 1 in 50,000 chances of something going wrong, it went wrong. And then the chances of getting CRPS are 1 in 100,000 or whatever.
Yeah.
It's like, here I am. So now I'm feeling I've got a
So other than buying a lottery ticket, on the other aspect of it, you've got everything bad going wrong.
Exactly.
And so you're concerned about getting the epidural.
Obviously, yeah. I just didn't want to take that risk, and I did research the epidural, and it just didn't jive with me.
It's a tough thing because these
yeah.
people, that's what they do, right?
Yeah.
Like, there's women who get the epidurals when they're delivering, and there's other people who go through epidurals for other things. So it's a very scary, risky thing, and of course it's going to go through your mind the entire time something's going through your spine.
Yeah,
right.
Yeah, and maybe it's a mental thing, but
the central nervous system is very scary.
Yeah, and that's what's affected with me is the nervous system, and so I'm still learning a lot about it, but at the same time too, it's like reading a mystery book that doesn't have an ending to it,
and not all the answers. It's a lot of guess.
No, there's not many answers. The only cure that is available is in Italy and Germany. It's done through an epidural, it's done through a drip. So, and I believe it's the same medication that they use for other things like Parkinson's and things like that, and like a nerve blocker too.
And so what's in it? Or do you know what this stuff is? What are your other pain options then too?
The only thing that works for me is I use cannabis oils for my foot in a topical cream format.
Yep.
I've gone as natural as I possibly can. The marijuana is the only thing for me, and it doesn't necessarily cure the pain that I go through.
It gives you a numbness.
But it does numb my foot a little bit.
Yeah.
And it just makes life a little bit more tolerable. I'm not as irritable as I am.
See, people say the C word and they go, cannabis, and everybody starts thinking, everybody's smoking everything. Cannabis is a natural thing, and it's an herb. It's a natural grown green thing, and it's got benefit. Yes. It really does. There are people who've given it to children to help with pain. It's all about dosage and the difference between recreational and medicinal.
Exactly.
Right?
Yeah. And so my point wasn't more or less for me to be sitting on the couch, smoking great big fatties and eating a bag of Doritos. That's not me. And I was also told that move it or lose it.
And I think anybody who knows you knows that that's not you.
Yeah, I don't sit still. It's not that I'm a hyper person. I just don't like to sit still for long periods of time.
Yeah.
So my only other choices, obviously, were painkillers, and I chose not to take that route. Basically, due to the fact of seeing what's going on around us. Mm-hmm. Not only in Barrie, but just everywhere in the world. From small town USA, it's taken over. It's everywhere, and it's at the point now where it's epidemic, and people have lost control of their lives. And
it's easy to get addicted to these things. Mm-hmm. I know that even on just looking at it on TV aspect or talking to people about it, the concept of taking oxy or fentanyl or all these things, and even though a doctor prescribes it to you, it's scary because of the addictive aspect of it.
You just did a show on
we did
fentanyl,
that. Yeah, we did.
So it's I just decided I didn't want to go down there. I've seen seen firsthand. I know of many, and it's not just your typical person walking around zoned out, downtown or wherever. It
has its benefit, but it can also be very destructive.
It can ruin lives, and if it ruins that life, it's going to ruin others too. The spin-offs are just too much of a vortex of.
It's a downward spiral.
Yeah, and it's leading nowhere good.
No.
So I took the choice of trying to stay healthy with this, change my diet, slow down on a few things that that I felt may affect the use of the cannabis, and I just wanted to try alternative methods to do this as naturally as possible and still deal with the pain. The pain,
that's tough.
It's very tough because I know that the chemicals may work better. They may. I don't know. I didn't even want to take that chance, but like I said before, to have that addiction just wasn't a road that I wanted.
Tough risks.
Yeah.
So you've done music. You're from around here. You're dealing with pain and stuff. You've got some really incredible things going on in your life. You're doing some things too to give back to the community too, other than just being you and being fun and everybody loves you. You're this interesting guy who gets involved in things that don't necessarily reflect you. Like you've been helping with accessibility stuff here in town too. You've been helping the community.
Yeah, I like to stay as active as, and because of my situation, it's not easy for me to do as much as I'd like to. I got involved in the culture department adopt a class program, which was great.
What is that?
Basically, you go into a class of grade 8s. First of all, you have to go through a screening process to make sure that I'm not a criminal.
Yeah, well, that's normal. That's normal to do that, yeah.
So thank goodness my slate was still clean. So you go in and talk to grade 8 students about life, about things that I've done. So it's funny how I talk to them about some of the publishing things I've done and the DJing and the music.
Blah, blah, blah magazine.
That's right.
Yeah.
And all the fun things I've done in the past, but it was the process serving stories that they liked the most. And I'm sure I should have had you come in too. They would have loved you as well.
The other Rogers, the other life.
Yes.
Yeah.
So so that was quite enjoyable. I got a lot of great enjoyment out of talking to the kids. So, and I also work with the City of Barrie Culture Department with the Battle of the Bands that they do. I've been judging that for
and that's
the
now
last
at the
few
McLaren.
years.
It's gotten bigger from when they did it at the Kempenfelt place over on the south end, the old canoe place.
Yeah,
the Barrie Rowing Club.
Yes,
sorry,
they were doing it there. And
showing my lack of Barrie history. You're trying to remember all the different names because it's changed names so many times.
Yeah, it has.
But now they're doing it at the McLaren, which I just love.
Yes.
Yeah.
They're doing it. I think this year they're doing it at the Mady, I believe. It's going to be an indoor event because they've done it down by the beach several times too. But weather permitting, it's been interesting. So,
yeah.
So I got involved with that, and yes, the accessibility. 2 years ago, I guess it was, before my surgery, I was downtown one evening, and a gentleman was strolling down the street in his wheelchair, and he kept on looking up, and I asked him, I said, is there anything I can help you with? You seem to be looking for something. He goes, I just want to get a drink of water. And I said, well, there's a store just down here, follow me. So we went down to the store, and the gentleman couldn't get in. He couldn't get in, because of the curb, and also the door access was not wide enough for him to get in. So it frustrated me. It frustrated me not knowing I was going to be considered disabled myself, but at that time it just frustrated me that this poor guy cannot even get a drink of water.
Yeah.
And that's all he wanted was a water. So we discussed it with the store owner at the time about your door access and not being available. I think we made a pretty strong point that there needed to be a change.
Yeah.
So anyway, I had my surgery. I kind of put everything in the back burner, and I had a good friend of mine, Rob Meyer, get a hold of me a week or two ago and discuss that this accessibility program is being launched by the city. So I was fortunate enough to be asked to get involved on the committee for this, and it looks like within the next, there's obviously steps to go through just because of measurements, curbs, clearance, allowance, etc.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of things to go through. Liability was a big one. There's a lot of hurdles to get over before we can get to that point where we have wheelchair ramps, but the ultimate goal is to have wheelchair accessible for everyone downtown.
Yeah, it's a fight to get it implemented, but once it's in, then it just kind of goes.
Yeah.
Right? I know people like Colin Wilson in town are advocates for it, and there's been people you see around town. I went into a convenience store not long ago with my kids, and there was a young guy in a wheelchair that couldn't get in, and like kids were like, can we get him something? I'm like, yeah, we'll get it for him and bring it out to him because he couldn't get in the door.
Yeah.
And you doing that, sometimes I don't think people understand that these things are going on, but until you see it, then it doesn't affect you.
Exactly, yeah.
Right? We could talk about it and go, oh, let those accessibility people, whatever. But until you see it, It's a whole different game. You see somebody with those struggles.
Yeah, and it's a big struggle too. I couldn't imagine going through that frustration of wanting the simplicity of getting a drink but not being able to access it.
Well, part of that struggle and not being able to do that, you've had your struggles. So I think people who go through struggles tend to relate to other people's struggles better. And I think a lot of people in town maybe not even realize the struggles around them. And I think that being in Barrie, growing up, it's a pretty cool community.
Yeah, it is. It's
right?
a great community.
There's always going to be people that you can't stand, but there's people who you just know care about the community. You're totally one of those guys. So what is something that is getting you through your daily life? You've got this wonderful woman in your life. You've got all kinds of great things going on for you. What's life like for you right now? What's it like other than the pain? What's a day like for you?
Well, my day starts off, I guess, with knowing that I have support. You mentioned my fiancée Jazz. Yes, she has been absolutely amazing, and you have to have a rock, and that's what it is. She has been a rock. There's times where I'm at the end of the bed bawling my eyes out, not knowing why I'm bawling. And I've said several times, it's not me in this body anymore. There's someone else inside here. I feel like I lost my identity. So, but anyway, it boiled down to people saying, oh, well, you got to keep going. You keep going. You don't have a choice.
So those tears aren't unfamiliar to a lot of people too.
No.
You're not alone in that.
No,
There's a lot
I'm
of people who will stand there and think that they're their own independent rock, and they're not.
No.
There are a lot of people sitting at the end of those beds, tears.
Oh, yeah.
More than people know.
And I think the more people who let others know about their dilemmas, me venting on Facebook a couple of weeks ago, I was blown away with the amount of response. I thought, this isn't about me getting a response back. This is me getting it off my chest as to what I face on a daily basis.
Yeah, life isn't Facebook likes, it's you liking you.
Yes, exactly. So it was great to realize that there is support out there, and a lot of people. And I was getting messages from people, I have no idea who they are. None. People from all over the world were sending me messages, inbox, and et cetera. And it was so fulfilling to know that there's such great support out there, and people like me who are going through chronic pain and other
Well, you've been
issues.
there for people too. You're looking at this wheelchair access thing, you're there for people, and people are there for you. I think it's a love, give thing.
Definitely, yeah,
right?
yeah. So getting through the day for me, sorry to get back to your question, for me daily is a matter of knowing that I'm going forward and I'm not looking back. The pain is in the back of my head, and I look at it that I don't have a choice. There is no choice. People say, oh, you've got options, you can do this. My choice is to go forward and not look back and look at this as someone has sent me a message to say that maybe you need to get out more in the community, more than you're already doing, and push myself to my limits as to see what I can do, and I feel like I'm tested every day.
Well, I look forward to seeing what you do in the community, because I think you've got a lot going on. I think you can do a lot of great things for people. I love that you're part of the just Barrie. Tell me a little bit about what your message would be to people. What do you want people to know, either about you or to just not ever give up hope and to just follow their dreams? What's something you tell the students, for example?
Well, that's one of the things that we did talk about was dreams, and not necessarily to go always with the norm of everything. Think outside of the box. No matter what you do, think outside of the box, because you always have alternative choices, and mainstream isn't necessarily all the way. And people who have become famous, inventors, whatever, have always thought outside the box.
Sure.
I mean, we'd be living in a pretty sterile, straight ahead world if everyone thought the same thoughts and
Sure.
did the same thing in a repetitive state. So telling these kids to be themselves, and I think by myself not going in there with a suit, shirt and tie on, it totally changed everything, because now they felt comfortable with me, just because I am who I am.
So basically, go outside of the box, live your dream.
Yeah, exactly.
Awesome.
Yeah.
I want to thank you for being my guest.
Thank you, Kevin.
And who knows, maybe we'll get to talk to you again on something else some other time.
Sounds good.
Thanks for
Appreciate
your time,
it.
Ian.
Thank you very
Thanks.
much, Kevin. Take care.